Personal thoughts, I will say, I find it interesting that this is still a discussion that needs to be had. Like, I look at it, and women have been in the workforce for close to a century now, and they've been making good money, or at least comparable levels to senior men money, for like, what, maybe about 15, 20 years even. And the fact that this is.
The royal penis is clean, Your Highness.
Welcome to the Breakdown Podcast, where I talk about love, sex, and relationships from a guy's perspective, as well as a bunch of other guy shit. The man on the mic is a man who might find it hard to breathe if you've got that asthma. He's also a man who likes his women the same exact way he likes his yogurt. It is none other than your tall, dark, and mildly handsome man, Sir Denver B, and I am here to talk about women and money. But not necessarily in the way that you might think, but interestingly enough, it's more about the women. Actually, no, I feel like it's... No, this isn't even about the women or the money. This is actually about the men, or the lack of men, or the inability of men. Like, I feel like it was supposed to look like it was about women and money, but this one's more about the men than I'd say it is about the women. But considering that all three of those topics are involved, just know that it's gonna be mostly one of those. And I'm not gonna lie, it might sound like I am leaning more towards one side or the other, but this isn't about me taking sides. This is me just talking about what I believe is really going on in some cases, and what might be affecting us as a people in others. Because it's not even about sides here. I think it's just about trying to show the truth of the matters that are affecting us on a day-to-day. Of which I hope you do listen all the way till the end so that you can fully understand that it's not like I'm trying to take sides or anything, especially when it comes to the main topic. The main topic is gonna sound like I'm taking a side, but it's not. And I hope you listen all the way till the end so that you can actually get that. Of which, should you like what it is that I'm discussing, should you not like it, should you have a different sort of feedback, or should you want to suggest a potential topic, then you can send them via the DMs. The DMs are always open, and the social media links rarely ever change, if ever. And I would be more than happy to receive your DMs and to handle them accordingly, because there's some things that I can talk about, and there's others that I may not fully understand the point. But all that said and done, I thank you very much for listening so far, and I hope you listen all the way till the end. And I should probably get down to business. And me talking about getting down to business kind of starts off with me talking about business to some degree, but more so the events and entertainment business. So if you were online for any amount of time last week, there's a pretty good chance that you noticed that there was this entire online discussion over the growing absence of men at clubs and events, and the fact that it's been growing and apparently was like a full-on online discussion. And the discussion mainly started from a post that was done by Nairobi Gossip Club, which was discussing the same. And the post says, and I quote, "Netizens have expressed concern over the noticeable absence of men in clubs, concert, and major entertainment events across the country. The discussion gained momentum after Sandra Shiko's viral post about the Mataha Festival in Kiambu, where she noted that nearly 70% of the attendees were women. Her observation sparked nationwide debate on social media, with many linking the trend to economic struggles, social pressure, and the changing priorities among men." End quote. And I don't want to get too deeply into it, because I feel like so many people got into the whole discussion of why men don't seem to be going to the clubs and to most of these events. Of which, I'll be very honest, I feel like most of the people are wrong. If you're talking about most men and why they're pulling back, I honestly feel like most people are wrong. Not because what they're saying isn't right, but I feel like most of what they're saying doesn't affect the vast majority of men, or even if it does, not to the level that they really think it does. Because I've mainly heard two different camps, okay? So there's one camp that says that, we're having an economic issue and men are suffering quite a bit, so spending money at the clubs and going for these events just doesn't seem to make sense. Then there's the other camp that are talking about how they don't see the need to go and do that because guys have been ushered for money, and these babes aren't really worth it, blah blah blah. Like, babes that drink aren't all that great. It's not like you're trying to look for a babe at the club. And guys have decided to kind of focus on themselves and give themselves self-care, okay? of which I feel like that camp is already even split into two, because there's a self-care side and then there's a side where guys are like, it just doesn't seem worth it to really go to the club or go for an event trying to pick up a shorty. And I believe that for the most part, the second camp where guys are like, it just doesn't seem to make as much sense why I would do that just to try and pick up a babe, kind of has the upper hand out of all of these guys, then the economic struggles, then the self-care one. But all that said, I don't really think I can give a reason why men aren't going to the clubs and the events, because I feel like even though it's to give or take, it would kind of fall into one of these three camps, of which I still don't think that it's self-care or economic struggles, because I've seen dudes struggling economically but still willing to look for money even though it's taking loans to go to the club just to try and pick up a babe, or just going to the club to try and stunt. Like, I've seen guys do that. I've also seen that even though the economy is mad, guys will find a way to like go out and have fun. Don't get me wrong. So I wouldn't entirely put economic struggles there. Even though it is quite a big issue, I don't think it's the main issue. I just feel like most guys don't really see the risk to reward ratio, or how do I call it? The cost benefit analysis of doing such, especially the popular clubs and the popular events, really making sense, okay? On an economic level and also on a personal, or should I say social level. Because when a guy is busy trying to fork out, a bunch of money at the club, busy trying to buy booze that they can get at their typical wines and spirits or at their local for much cheaper, and they're doing that as they're busy trying to pull a babe, which means possibly paying for her drinks, or her and her friends can come and they'll end up drinking your drinks, of which for the most part, like afterwards, you probably won't go home with them, and even if you go home with them, like they can be quite the bother. Like, it just doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. Like, people forget that back during our parents' time, people were going to the club, or should I say back in the day, people used to go to the disco, or the discotheque as they used to call it, because they would meet people, they would have fun and enjoy themselves. But mostly, like, there was the idea that they could meet someone as they're busy having fun and something could spark up out of it, okay? To a pretty good degree, there was that. But nowadays, you're going to the club and you're mostly chilling as your crew. You're not really trying to pull other babes. Yes, shorties will be looking good, but it just doesn't make sense for you to be there. But all in all, considering that I wasn't supposed to have spoken about, my thoughts on why, even though I kind of have, what I was actually going to talk about is the fact that it's less about the why and it's more about guys just wanting to have fun under better terms. Like, if you take away the whole idea of pulling babes and seeing a fine babe here and there, like, what guys really want to do is usually chill with the homies and one other thing. As someone once actually said, I think it was in a podcast or something, like, most guys will usually have that one other thing, and that's what will make things really good for them. So it's usually you'll chill with the guys and one other thing. So whether it's you guys grabbing drinks while watching football, whether it's you guys bantering while having drinks, whether it's you guys bantering while playing FIFA and having drinks, whether it's you guys just, having nyamachoma while bantering together. Like, for most guys, our pleasures, our desires are pretty simple. It's not like we're trying to go to Hero Restaurant to try out sashimi or some shit. Like, we're not trying to do any extraordinary or special experiences as a squad. For the most part, we just want to chill, sip a little bit, if you're into that kind of thing. And, just chill with the homies and do something that is just okay and fun and easy to pass time with. Which is where doing something like playing FIFA kind of falls in. So, in as much as I'd have thought that maybe the issue is the revenue and the fact that clubs and events might not be making as much money because men aren't going, like, it's something a lot simpler than that, because it's not the events guys that raised this issue. This was something that was brought up by a lady on Facebook and another guy that was basically talking about the same thing on IG. And, both of those posts went viral. But in essence, it's just the fact that guys just want to have fun, and guys having fun is usually something very simple. And more often than not, it tends to be very low cost, not unless we start throwing babes into the mix. So, for the most part, I'd say guys aren't as interested in trying to pick up babes in a lot of these places. And, guy fun is usually relatively cheap and simple and doesn't require us to go for such things. Because, when was the last time you had a guy saying that he loves going for live performances? But, then again, I could be wrong about this, and this is just my take on it, which is a lot less about the why and a lot more on guys just not really wanting that for their own directly personal purposes. But all in all, I could be wrong, so I'm going to leave it at that and move it on to our main topic of this episode, which is interesting because I feel like the conclusion is basically the title, and if anything, I feel like if that was the case, I could just end it and kind of just end the episode here. But of course, there's a bunch of extra minutes if you check the timer. So, clearly there's a little bit more to that. Now, there was a statement that I once saw online, which I found to be very interesting. And the reason I'm starting with this statement is because there is a lot that you're going to hear from here on out that directly correlates with this statement being true. And it was on some TikTok video, I can't even remember what it was about, and someone said that we empowered women, but we did not prepare the world for empowered women. And it's a very, very interesting statement. And more often than not, if you hear a guy saying this, the assumption is that, it's not the world, it's like men. Like men weren't ready for empowered women, or we should have prepared the men, and it's gonna sound like we have something against empowered women, which really isn't the case. This isn't just a men thing, it involves women too. And I'm not just talking about lesbians. We as the world were not ready for empowered women. And I remember this statement when I was checking out a Reddit post not too long ago where someone was busy talking, or at least asking, how some people in relationships were thriving where the woman was earning more than them. Or, where the woman is the higher earner than the man. And it was very interesting to me for certain reasons, which I'll get to in a bit, because there's an entire discussion around this, and there's debates about this, which I find to be sometimes not that great, but very interesting to listen to, because it just shows you how some people may not have understood or moved with the times to actually try and reconsider their thoughts. But anyways, before you make any assumed conclusions, let me read the post and give my thoughts on it. So the post says, and I quote, "What is your relationship like? Do you split the bills, or does one of you handle them entirely? How about house chores? Do you take care of cooking and cleaning, or is that his responsibility now? Who usually gives gifts to the other? Do you choose a date and locations, or is it he who decides? Do you think he would act differently if he were the one earning more? I have many questions. Can you share how it works for you?" End quote. And this is actually very good, because it kind of asked broadly how people are doing in relationships where the woman is earning more and how that's affected them. It's a fairly general way in asking all of these questions, but I also liked how the comments came in, because I have a couple of comments here and it seemed very, very well balanced, at least to some degree as opposed to others. And the first comment that I saw here said, and I quote, "I earn more than my boyfriend, way more, and it's a non-issue most of the times. I pay my rent and bills, we both take each other on dates, gift each other, and share chores. He does the cooking and the dishes, and I clean the house. Laundry is easy since we have a washing machine, so whoever feels like it. I have to chip in multiple times for treats and snacks, but I don't mind since he does the same too, whenever he can. We both choose date locations based on the budget of who's paying. The only downside is every time I want to indulge in something extravagant like a vacation, I feel guilty since he feels left out." End quote. Which I like, because at least, you can see that these guys split the bills to some degree, and they don't look at the money like a defining factor, which a question like this and a post like this clearly shows you that a lot of women look at a man's money as a defining factor in the idea of a relationship or in dating today. But all in all, that said, the next commenter said, and I quote, "I think this is usually a societal issue. In countries with true gender equality like Central and Northern Europe, it happens a lot and is an issue. In countries with gender equality like the USA and Africa, she will eventually start to treat you different. Humans are animals and animals can be conditioned by the environment or perceived reality. Variances exist. End quote. Which I like because, it does kind of show that, in some areas this isn't really an issue because they've kind of gotten used to the whole idea of either side can be earning a little bit more as opposed to some other parts of the world. So even when it comes down to paying the bills, it doesn't seem like an issue because it's a simple discussion that can be had. Now, there was someone else who said, and I quote, "A few years ago I dated a guy who earned less than what I would usually make, but he was not awkward about it. We lived separately, so we never split any bills, but when we would hang out, he paid the bills, and I really respected him for that. But of course, there were times I would suggest we try out a new restaurant, and I would happily pay for the treat." End quote. And on this bit, I can see how someone would talk about the man having to be the provider and choosing to be the provider. And for such people, a discussion like this isn't really something that they would even consider in the first place. But, sometimes it is good to at least try and, discuss some of these things because I believe that they are important, especially in today's day and age. But considering that I brought out the provider side that is very pro-women on that front, let me bring now the other side that, doesn't look as good. Well, someone said, and I quote, "I tried a talking stage with such a guy. I have never seen such levels of insecurity before." End quote. And, that's the other flip side that, some women usually like to bring up whenever they're like, "Oh, I don't mind my man earning less, but blah, blah, insecurity, blah, blah, or blah, blah, intimidation, blah, blah." Now, comments aside, personal thoughts, I will say, I find it interesting that this is still a discussion that needs to be had. I look at it and women have been in the workforce for close to a century now, and they've been making good money, or at least comparable levels to senior men money, for maybe about 15-20 years even. And the fact that this is still a discussion is something that I find a little bit odd, because y'all are making good money now. A lot of y'all are making really good, sometimes way better money than most guys out here, but you're still stuck on the whole, I need a man to provide. I want a man who provides and takes care of the bills. Sure, you make more money essentially. That's like me saying that I want my babe to be lifting stuff around the house, even though I can probably lift and I'm stronger. It just doesn't seem to make sense. But anyways, I know the whole analogy of lifting stuff doesn't really make sense. And I don't think a lot of women actually understand that it's not like we're in the financially advantageous position we used to be in 20-30 plus years ago, where the idea of the man being a provider or being the provider and the breadwinner was a lot easier to just go for. Nowadays, it's a lot different than that. And I can remember I was having a discussion with a friend of mine not too long ago, and she works with a lot of people in HR. And she had gone for a conference for men in HR, and when she was listening to men articulate themselves about some of the challenges they faced, that was when she started to realize that men aren't doing as well as a lot of women think, and a lot of men are actually doing worse than that, way worse, in that a lot of the privileges that women seem to be getting in the corporate world don't seem to be coming to men, and men are always believed to be in this position of privilege where they're doing better, they're earning more, they'll get more promotions and shit. And as such, because we're trying to elevate the woman and we're still trying to elevate the woman, it's like the men are being left behind, and it's actually affecting us quite a bit. And especially when you look at income, it can affect us quite directly, in that it can even hinder our ability to actually go out and date. Because if you're trying to go out on dates and a babe that makes 3-4 times more than you is like, I want a man who can provide for me, fam, I'm not saying that she's out of your league. I'm just saying that the tax bracket is clearly the hindering factor here. So when I look at it, it does make the idea of dating harder. And it does make the idea of having a good long-term partnership even harder. And it's something that ends up affecting not just the men, but the women as well. Because it's not like if you guys have trouble dating guys, most of y'all will just turn lesbian. I don't think that's really gonna be the case. Maybe a few might, but I don't really see that being the case. And I'm sure most women will bring up the stats on how, there's more men in leadership positions, there's more men that make a bunch of money. But oftentimes, most people forget that a lot of those men are usually married men. And not unless if you're gonna go out and start dating a married man or having a thing with a married man, or, possibly get married to a married man as a second wife, it still doesn't work in your favor either. And I'm not saying that you need to make less or you shouldn't chase, some level of career progression where you're making really good money. I'm saying that y'all will probably have to start rethinking the idea of the man being the provider for your own good. Because I kid you not, there's a lot of men out here that aren't doing as well as you think. Actually, most men out here aren't doing as well as you actually think. And to properly elaborate on this, I'm going to pull an article that was done by my friend Marvin Chege, who is the news blogger behind viralty.co.ke, where he was actually talking about why it is men aren't being seen at clubs and events nowadays. And he was referencing some very recent stats. So, as he said, according to the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics data released in 2024, it showed that 92% or 14,268 of the 15,252 new 100K a month earners in 2023 were women. Comparatively, there were 1,256 new male employees with a monthly pay of over 100,000 bob per month in 2023, indicating a slower growth compared to the 13,132 in 2022. Now, essentially what he was saying was that the people that just crossed over or joined the 100K per month club, as far as employees in the country is concerned, 92% of those people were actually women, okay? And only about 1,200 out of 15,200 were actually men, which is wild. It is actually quite wild. But if anything, it clearly does show how there's a lot more women that are making more money, at least over the past year, and I don't think they seem to be noticing that guys aren't doing as well as they think they are. People still have this idea that men make more money. And yes, there are a couple of guys that are doing pretty well for themselves, but I don't think people realize just how well a lot of women seem to be doing for themselves. Mostly because a lot of the stuff that women will do when they make really good money isn't stuff that you'll see out here. Like a dude starts making a ton of cash and you'll find him buying expensive bottles at the club, he'll upgrade his car. You find a babe making a shit ton of money and she's improving the decor in her house. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying it's bad, it's just, the only people that are noticing that shit are the people that check into your house, which isn't most people. Like a guy changing cars, everyone in the area that knows of the guy or just manages to spot a new car will notice that the guy is suddenly or seemingly making more money. But if anything, it just comes down to showing how the idea of hypergamy today in today's society and with today's working class generations or just working class people in general is more of a fantasy than it is a reality. Are there instances where the man is making more? Yes. But for the most part, there's a lot of guys that could be making less, but for the most part, I believe that most people are around about the same level. Although I mean that comparatively speaking. Actually, I'd even argue that women seem to be doing a lot better than men are, especially considering that we have more women that are pursuing further education beyond just the typical degree. There is more programs that are about trying to uplift women in different sectors as opposed to men. And just overall with that, in and of itself, it's almost like they've just made it easier for women to be more empowered. Not even than the men, but just more empowered in general. So assuming they'll now be capable of being with guys that make the same, although most times the idea is more, is a little bit hard considering that a lot of men nowadays aren't going that far in school, aren't making that much money, but they're still a part of the dating market. And the toughest part about it is, they're still interacting with these women that want to have their cake and eat it too, because a man's role is to sort out the bills and be the provider. And usually the moment you bring up the idea of splitting bills, suddenly it's this issue, because if we were splitting bills or if I'm the one paying for stuff, then I wouldn't respect you as a man. And I'm like, why the fuck does the respect have to be tied to my ability to earn more than you, or to be able to handle more bills than you, or just handle the bills in general? Why does it have to be tied to that? Why is it that your respect is simply because you're a woman, but my respect is tied on my ability to provide? Doesn't that seem inconsiderate or unfair, to say the least? And I'm not saying this because, guys can't be able to, move their money up or anything. Don't get me wrong. Like, there's a lot of instances where guys, get with someone that makes more than them, but they end up surpassing them in income, and also vice versa. But the issue is, we all have an idea of what the economic situation is. For our country and in a lot of places around the world, it's not like the economy is all that great, all right? People out here are busy complaining that they're not making enough money, or stuff is becoming too expensive. And, people can blame the government and everything, but at the end of the day, like, you're crying about how fucked up the economy is and you're making good money, but you expect the guy that may make the same, if not less than you, to be able to handle the bills while your money is your money and his money is, the both of y'all's money. Like, make that shit make sense. And I know there's someone that's gonna talk about how they don't mind handling some of the smaller bills, blah blah, but you're basically just trying to pick and choose the one that you're comfortable paying, and then you're gonna leave the rest, and then you say that you love this person, but you're not trying to lighten his burden or his load. Like, I don't know, it seems a bit odd. It seems a little bit odd, and I know that for most people, they'd see me complain about this because I can see how men are losing out and how, it's really affecting the state of relationships and everything, and it might look like, it's just a man's issue. But this is an issue that's going to affect both genders. It's an issue that's affecting both genders. And if anything, it's not that it's the men that are losing. Like, we're all losing in totality. When you're busy saying that you want this fantasy of a guy and you're ignoring the current reality, and there's this guy that is also having the fantasy of making enough money or making more money so that he can go out into the dating market, like, there's this massive gap that can be filled by both sides if they agree to work together, that many people aren't ready to try and step in and fill. And up until we think of actually filling that gap, I feel like the gap is going to widen, and I feel like more and more women are going to be complaining that there's no great guys to date out here. It's just the married men that seem to be hitting on them. And more guys will probably even avoid going for these events because they don't have the money to spend on these events, and also it just doesn't seem worth it. And to kind of conclude all of this, I'm not against the empowerment of women. Don't get me wrong. It might seem like I am, but I'm not against the empowerment of women. Like, I'm happy that women are getting empowered, and it's great. Alright? It is actually quite good. But even with all of that empowerment thrown in, like, are you someone that can be considered a dependable partner if you're going to hold on to all of your income and still live by the fantasy of having someone that is going to sort out bills? Because if that's the fantasy that you're living with, if that's the idea or the ideal that you're looking at, then I'm sorry to say this, but like, there's a pretty good chance that most of the relationships that are going to be coming out from the dating market are going to be short term, if any, and they aren't going to be very fulfilling because, if a guy knows that he can't really get to that level, then he'll just give what he can give, of which a lot of these guys will just say, let me just go and lay some premium pipe because, it's not like I really need to earn my dick. So if I'm good at delivering dick, then let me go deliver some, but I don't need to commit myself because I'm just not there yet. Or, I could be wrong about this, and there's guys making way more, and then I totally don't understand what I'm saying. Either way, I want your thoughts on it. The DMs are open. On IG, it is at the Breaktime_podcast. On Facebook, it is at the Breaktime Podcast. On X, it is at BagakTheD. And on Bluesky, it is at the BreaktimePod.bsky.social. Thank you so much for listening all the way till the end, and I will catch you guys on the next break.
But what I believe is that if you put a pastor and a prostitute in one room, one is likely to convert the other.